What's up everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to go through a full leg session that I recently did in Banus Gym in Dubai. This is not a typical bodybuilding workout, it's focusing more on developing power, strength, muscle building work, along with some mobility and cardio as well. At the moment I'm not training to get as strong as possible, I want to be functional, I want to be fit and I want to feel more athletic. Now before I go into the full workout, just let me share the reason why I'm programming it this way. First of all, as we age, your fast-twitch muscle fibers responsible for explosive power and strength, they naturally diminish. In fact, research shows after the age of 30 you lose strength by roughly 3 to 5% per decade. After the age of 40 you decrease in strength by up to 18% per decade, meaning that it's this use it or lose it approach. So I want to be functional, I want to be fit, I want to be athletic, I want to be able to run and lift as I age, which is why I've structured the workout this way to combine power, strength, isolation movement and cardio work. Okay, so getting straight into it, we started today's session with a 5 kilometer run. Now I know this is the opposite of what the research says and I'm not going to argue with that. Personally, what I do find is that when I have a bit of a sweat on before I lift, I get a much better pump and my performance is actually better. Cardio for me as well, it will just increase my core temperature and blood flow to the working muscles. And personally for me, getting a sweat on early, it primes me mentally and physically. It clears my head, it gets my hips moving, it gets blood flow in the legs and it sets the tone for a productive strength session. The 5k run was done in approximately 21 minutes 28 seconds before going on to my first primer of the day. So my first primer movement of the day was box jumps. I did 3 sets of 5 reps. Now power output is the first quality to decline, as I said, when you age. And box jumps are a plyometric movement that train rate of force development, which is your body's ability to train with the maximal force in minimal time. So if you're over the age of 30, especially if you're over the age of 40 and you're not training explosive, you're doing some form of power work, you're leaving performance goals and longevity on the table. When you're doing box jumps, the key here is quality over quantity. 5 reps is the sweet spot. It will maximize output without causing excessive fatigue. Now this is the opposite of what you see in CrossFit or group HIIT classes where you do box jumps for 30 seconds or 60 seconds, as many as possible. Box jumps are primarily a power-based movement, which is why you want full intent and long rests in between. So for me, I did 3 sets of 5 reps or roughly a 90-second rest in between. Next we transition into pre-activation movement before I deadlift. I supersetted the booty builder with seated adduction. Personally speaking, when I activate my glutes and my adductors before I deadlift, I perform much better and I also feel much better. And in fact, research does indicate that pre-activation work before compound lifts can increase their subsequent muscle recruitment. So starting out with hip thrusts, I did 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps. These activate your glute medius and also help stabilize your pelvis. And for me, whenever I do hip thrust or booty builder before I deadlift, it just feels better. I feel more mobile, I get a better mind-muscle connection, and I get more blood flow into the glutes. For the booty builder, I did 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps, while supersetting this with seated adduction. Warming up my adductors before I deadlift helps because they're one of the primary muscles responsible in hip extension. Hip extension is when you sit your hips back, i.e. what you do when you deadlift. As well as this, the adductors help keep your knees in control. And for me, this 1-2 combo of glute and adductor activation helps me prep for heavy strength work and minimizes low back strain. So now we go on to the main lift of the day. This is touch and go trap bar deadlifts. 4 sets of 3 to 5 reps, heavy and controlled. Now, why do I do trap bar over the straight bar deadlift? For me, I love the straight bar deadlift, but long-term risk management and just staying injury-free is more important for me than adding an extra 5 or 10 kilos. And in the past, I have got injured deadlifting. Not saying they're a bad exercise, just for me and for my body type, they generally don't suit me that well. However, with the trap bar, I place the load in line with my center of mass, which will essentially reduce the force on my low back and on my spine. Also, the neutral grip position decreases stress on your biceps and will improve your shoulder positioning. The trap bar deadlift allowed me to load up relatively heavy, there's less range of motion, and they also are a great way to train both full body strength and power. Furthermore, the trap bar activates your quads more, and because this session is more hamstring and glute dominant, it lends well into my performance-based goals. I did 4 total sets of 5, 5, 3 and 5 reps. And this low rep range keeps me in the optimal zone of strength development without excess metabolic fatigue. Furthermore, your body has 2 main types of muscle fibers, fast twitch and slow twitch. The best way to train fast twitch fibers are to train with speed or to lift heavy. For the trap bar deadlift, I rested 2 or 3 minutes between each set to ensure that I complete recovery. Now, following a primary strength movement, I then transitioned to walking lunges for 3 sets of 10 to 12 on each leg. Unilateral or single leg work is great for multiple reasons. First of all, it trains the stabilizer of your hip, your ankle and your knee in a functional pattern. Second, it corrects any muscular imbalances you have between your right and your left side. And third, it just carries over to my running, Because you run on one leg, you should also train in one leg too. Now, the higher rep range of 10 to 12 each side, this transitions more towards metabolic stress and muscular damage, which is essentially how I feel coming towards the end of a long run. When you're doing your walking lunges, try to keep your torso as upright as possible and focus on driving your knee out the way, which will activate your glute. Now, if you know, lunges are an absolute quad and glute killer, but they're an also amazing way to build resilience. And when you do them after deadlifts, that is where real grit kicks in. Now we move on to our first isolation movement of the day, and this is a seated hamstring curl. While compound movements like deadlifts are phenomenal for building your hamstrings, research indicates they predominantly target the upper part of your hamstrings. However, the seated leg curl focuses more on the lower part of your hamstring, which is essential not just for aesthetics but also reducing your risk of hamstring injury, which is one of the most common injuries, especially in running. For me, I did a controlled reps with full contraction, zero ego lifting at all, and really focus on time under tension. These are an amazing exercise for minimizing knees pain, and they also will support your hip hinge when you're deadlifting. And finally, we finish up with some often neglected calf and tib raises. Now, calves get attention for aesthetics for sure, but that's not just why I do them. Strong calves will also support your ankle, improve your running economy, and reduce the risk of Achilles or knee issues. And of course, there is the aesthetic kick that goes with them. Tib raises, on the other hand, are one of the most underrated leg exercises you can do. If you want to prevent shin splints and build better foot control, then train your tibialis. And if your gym has them, these are non-negotiable exercises in my opinion for anyone who runs, who jumps or plays sport. And that is our full evidence-based lower body session. This combines key elements of power, strength, hypertrophy and also injury prevention, mobility work. And for me, I'm not just training to look good, I'm also training to move better, to feel better and perform better. If you found this video helpful, make sure you like and subscribe for more evidence-based training content. And until next time, train hard, but also train smart.